the Chase Thomas Podcast, for people who have nothing but time to kill.
Oh, they never do it. Kyle will never get one of those guys. They won't put together the Megazord of NFL coaching staffs here with everybody coming together. The best defensive coach of all time with the best offensive coach in the league right now. They would never do it. And yet, rumblings this week. Could it be Pete Carroll, who you tweeted out about today, who has some free time right now, one of the all-time great defensive coaches as well, and Bill Belichick still rumbling around of like, are we sure that Bill Belichick won't take this one-year flyer to train the next DC for San Francisco going into next year, kind of in like a Georgia Kirby Smart era with Glenn Schumann a couple years ago for the college football heads here? Evan, you're welcome is all I can say right now, because are we inching towards Pete Carroll or Bill Belichick actually taking the DC job for San Francisco for 1 year?
You're going to get Brandon Staley and you'll like it.
I don't know about this.
They basically, here's my thought. Because they already announced today after so 49ers world. A couple days ago, rumor came out amongst people that the DC had been announced. Tim Kawakami had kind of hinted at it. I think people might have just took that and run with it. You had a bunch of 49ers writers that were like, the DC is going to be announced in the next couple hours. Nothing. My guess is that they probably interviewed Brandon Staley. They probably interviewed Sorensen, right? These are guys that they logically we've all thought would be there. But I would imagine they're probably in the background calling Bill. Everyone thinks it's Pete. I don't think Pete would be a defensive coordinator. But I do think he might be the more likelihood than Belichick. But my long shot tinfoil hat has been, and I've said this on Twitter, Kyle Shanahan and Bill Belichick have a fantastic relationship together. Bill respects the hell out of Kyle. They have had conversations. It has been discussed. It has been written about since basically Kyle's first year as a head coach. There's a reason why Bill Belichick, essentially when he realized that he was no longer going to be able to keep Jimmy if he wanted to make Tom Brady happy, called Kyle and said, if you want Jimmy G, it's a second rounder. You have 5 minutes to decide. Peace. And he did that because he respects Kyle, the offensive scheme. He knows, he's a very talented coach, etc. So, I think they're probably sitting there going, okay, let's line up, Staley, let's line up Sorensen. Let's get these interviews and we'll go with one of them if we have to. But in the back of his mind, he's like, Bill, these guys are trash. Like, just
or not ready. Or the guy Sorensen's not being ready yet.
Just come be a consultant. Just be a consultant. We'll give you assistant head coach, just like we gave Anthony Lynn, right? You can be, assistant head coach, or you could even just be defensive consultant, right? Like they did with Vic Fangio on other teams, whatever. Just come on, Bill, come get one more ring so you can tie Tom Brady. Is it the same? Not really. But, hey, sometimes toxic people, when they have scorned relationships, will go try to have sex with your ex.
Oh, wow. I didn't know where this sentence was going.
And maybe Bill goes, oh, you know what? You left and you got a ring. Well, I'm going to go back to your hometown and win a Super Bowl.
I love this. JP is still good. I feel the cold water coming. I feel the ice pouring over this podcast. JP, is that what's happening here?
We're being really freaking weird about Pete Carroll. First of all,
what do you mean?
He took a job within the front office of the Seattle Seahawks. He didn't just stop coaching or stop being around football.
But that could have just been saving face. You know what I mean?
I think that's an easy wiggle out of. Like, that just feels to me like
it would be incredibly callous and an incredibly crappy move for Pete Carroll to leave a destination where he basically brought the Seahawks from the ashes into being one of the greatest franchises of the 2010s. And for him to just leave and go to the 49ers after being announced that he would be in the front office as an advisor to Mike McDonald, who they very much respect.
Can you imagine? Like
that would
defensive, or like a front office to I'm gonna go coach your rival.
I mean, what this would be, does Richard Sherman factor into this at all? Aren't he and Pete close? And Richard's basically like a Niner guy now. Like it feels like he's transitioned to a Niner guy.
It would be bigger than Richard going to the Niners because Pete Carroll is the Seahawks, for a generation of fans that are like, my brother's 19. He was born in 2005. He only knows Pete Carroll as Seattle Seahawks head coach. That's his entire lifetime. That'd be insane. The Bill stuff, I don't know. I don't know if he takes a DC job this year. I think he sits out. I think he pulls a Mike McCarthy. I think he goes and he just chills for a year and a half. Then somebody's going to mess up. Mike McCarthy is probably going to mess up. And Bill Belichick will be there waiting.
I just don't know.
Peter King had the best idea for them, which is Bill Belichick and Nick Saban should be doing a coach's streamcast for big games this fall together. That should be happening.
They should. I would pay good money to listen to Bill Belichick and Nick Saban talk football. Of course, they need to have a good host. Maybe get a Chris Fowler. Let Chris Fowler kind of host the Nick Saban Bill Belichick podcast. Kind of let them bounce ideas off each other. I would pay so much money for that.
I'm just saying, Monday Night Football, playoff game, and just have them do the Manning cast, their own version of the Manning cast.
Oh, I'd also watch that. I watched the hell out of that. You could do a little, how they had the national championship alternate cast where one year it was just Texas A&M for some reason and Jimbo Fisher and his entire staff, which is really lame. A couple years ago, they had a bunch of different coaches who had played the teams, and I thought that was cool. Just have Nick Saban and Bill Belichick do it. Yeah, that'd be awesome.
But also, Pete Carroll, I think, is the best scenario here because Pete Carroll, that would be brutal. The Seahawks, if Pete Carroll took that job.
Let me just say this, though, because I want to shout out Akash. We all, Anna Varanthan, who everyone, I think, that follows me knows Akash. He made a good point. Pete, when you think of Pete, you think about all the wins against the 49ers, right? All the Russell Wilson wins, the NFC Championship. But what you forget to remember is Kyle's got Pete locked the fuck up. Kyle's got him in a little glad bag, just carries him around. He is strapped up. Kyle has been handing Pete his ass ever since Kyle basically got even a remotely decent team. So unless Pete is coming over to be okay, here's my scheme, and Kyle can kind of talk to him and be well, here's how I've been handing you your shit for 5 years, and maybe they can create some amalgamation defense scheme. I don't know. JP, I'm sure you've got something much more intelligent to say about that.
I think that would be really cool. It'd be very funny for Pete Carroll to go to Kyle and be hey, how did you kick our ass for 5 years or more it's still the funniest thing to me, Kyle Shanahan taking the job with Dan Quinn in Atlanta just to figure out how to break that defense and then going to San Francisco and repeatedly breaking that defense every single time he got the chance. I think Bill Belichick is obviously the pipe dream, but the realistic home run hire would be Jeff Ulbrich, the Jets defensive coordinator. Comes from, of course, Robert Saleh, comes from that 49er style defense. The Jets defensive line is absolutely nasty, and they always get really good play. And hey, hypothetically, you hire Jeff Ulbrich, you might be able to get Bryce Huff too. And Bryce Huff is really good and would be a much different type of pass rusher than the Niners have had in a minute. So I think Jeff Ulbrich would be really good. Don't hire Brandon Staley because unless you want to give up 6 yards a carry, don't hire Brandon Staley.
But does he actually fit them all? Because as an outside guy, what's the crossover there with him and Shanny? Do they have a prior relationship?
Brandon Staley and Kyle Shanahan, none that I think of outside of facing each other in 2020.
That's what I'm saying. This feels like a Wilkes thing. I don't if you're gonna fire Wilkes, you don't bring in Staley. I don't feel like that solves the problem here. You want clearly Shanahan wants a guy.
Some overlap. There's probably some overlap with McVay and kind of being the godfather of all this.
The Staley thing was more so about, like, people talked about how he was willing to try a lot of different things in his year that when he was the Rams defensive coordinator. Like, Staley was like very experimental, and I think that might be the thing that Wilks was kind of struggling with, of like, you want me to not use my own scheme? You know, like, maybe Staley will be okay with what Kyle wants, trying some things.
But also, when Brandon Staley got away from having the greatest defensive player of our generation on the team, those defenses progressively got worse. So, again, that team gave up like 6 yards a carry last year. Like that, his defenses are deliberately built to give up the run, so you don't give up 40-yard passes and then end up doing both. I would not hire Brandon Staley in an NFC that's going to have a lot of teams that want to run the freaking ball at you, like Detroit. Green Bay is going to want to run the ball a lot. I think Philadelphia, that's all they do is run the ball and hit you in the face with offensive linemen. I would not touch Brandon Staley at all this year. He needs to do the Mike McCarthy PFF thing and kind of go chill out somewhere.
We shall see. What's your final pick here, Evan? Because it seems like they're going to have a hire before next week's pod, right? When you guess?
Yeah, this is by the end of the week.
So who's your prediction here? Who's your official one?
Sorensen.
Okay. JP, what's your pick?
I think I'm going to go Sorensen because I think they just promote from within house.
I'm going to go. I think it's Ulbrich. I think they actually just pull him from New York. I think that just happens. I think they're able to just pull him.
That'd be such an incredibly funny move. It'd be hilarious because Robert Saleh really needs something to work in New York, or he is not lasting past like Halloween this upcoming season. He needs to kind of swing for the fences here, and his first big move, losing his defensive coordinator, probably not the best.
JP, what should the Bears do with the number 1 overall pick? Like it was mentioned in the Peter King retirement. Shout out to Peter King, one of the best, friend of the program. I'm going to miss reading his Football Morning in America column each and every Monday during the NFL season, dating back to the Monday morning column he had at SI that I read over the years, and just one of the best. But he had that nugget in there about, hey, like the Bear, like he expects, like it wasn't like any inside reporting. It's just based on people he's talked to, I think, that like the Bears are probably going to trade that pick. And you're like, wait, what? But it's just kind of in there. It's just like his sense is that they'll trade it. And it's just like, I think for all of us, we've assumed that they would not trade out of that pick in back-to-back years. But I don't know. You're Ryan Proles here, JP Acosta. What do you do with the number 1 pick if you're Chicago?
If it were me, I am trading Justin Fields.
Nicely done, nephew. The Chase Thomas podcast. Hell yeah.